Today we're taking a look at the GoPro 11 Mini and doing a little bit of FPV testing while we're at it. So we went for the GoPro 11 Mini over the regular GoPro 11 because of the weight savings. So when you use the GoPro 11 Mini, let's say on an FPV drone, it's considerably lighter than the normal GoPro 11. So when you're flying an FPV drone, it makes all the difference. Freewell also sent out some ND filters to test with the 11 Mini. I'm excited. Did try the polarizer real quick last night at sunset, but now we're gonna test out the ND filters. So let's talk a little bit about the specs of the GoPro 11 Mini. Now it's very similar to the GoPro 11. It shoots 5.3K video up to 60 frames per second in 10-bit. There's also a 2.7K mode where you can shoot up to 240 frames per second. On both the GoPro 11 and Mini, they now use H.265 encoding only, which is really good because you actually get more for the amount of data that's being written, which is part of the reason that both of these cameras now shoot 10-bit video. Now the only downside to H.265 is if you have an older computer, they tend not to handle the H.265 well. So at this point, it may be time to upgrade just because most modern cameras now are shooting H.265. My Canon R7, DJI Mini 3 Pro, even my old Mavic 2 Pro, a lot of these new cameras shoot H.265. So it's really not that big of a deal. And even the most basic M1 MacBook Air can easily handle H.265. Now, another thing you'll notice with the 11 Mini is that not only is it smaller and lighter, but it also is missing screens on the front and the back. With that being said, because there's no screen on the back, GoPro actually added an additional mounting point on the back of the 11, which opens up new possibilities of areas to mount the camera, as traditionally for many years, you were only able to mount GoPros from the bottom of the camera. So now that you can add it from the back, you can do things like mount them differently on FPV drones, on chest mounts. There are just a lot more options. Now, there is a record button on the top of the 11 Mini. However, there aren't really many ways to change your video settings. So you do need to use the GoPro app in order to cycle through and change your settings, also to get a live view monitor and actually see what you're filming. Now, I think in a lot of situations, once you know exactly what settings you want, I think a lot of people are either going to be 24p shooters at 5.3K or 60 frames per second shooters at 5.3K. I think because this camera is such a specialty camera, you'll kind of have your frame rates and you won't have to use the app all the time, but you are obviously going to have to use it when you want to switch between whatever modes you want. Now, speaking of modes, there is one thing missing from the 11 Mini that is on the regular GoPro 11, and it's going to be a big deal for some of you, and that's that the 11 Mini does not have a photo mode. And I know a lot of people buy GoPros because they want a small portable all-in-one camera that they can do videos, photos, whatever, and the photos are missing from the 11 Mini. So that brings me to who the 11 Mini's for, and I think that the 11 Mini is a specialty camera GoPro. I think a lot of us, including me, thought that I would just pick up the 11 Mini because of how much smaller it was. And now we have uses for it as being an FPV drone camera. That's where I think the biggest use for this camera is actually going to be in the FPV market. Pretty much any niche areas where you need to absolutely be saving on the weight and size of the camera. So if you were looking for the photo modes, I would still look at the regular GoPro 11 because it's not really that much more expensive. It's on sale right now if you buy it from GoPro.com for only $50 more, but you have the screens on the front and the back. You also have the photo mode, so that's going to be a big deal. But If you only shoot video and you're going to have super niche uses for this camera, just like we do using it as an FPV drone camera, then I think the 11 Mini is definitely the way to go, because you do get a little bit of a weight savings. You have the different areas to mount the camera itself. And then there's also the fact that the camera only has an internal battery on the 11 Mini, which is good in one way because it's definitely one of the ways that they're saving weight on the camera. But it's bad if this is going to be your only camera and you're traveling a lot. Well, you can't swap out your batteries. You're going to have to charge the camera every time. So there is that to think of as well. When you're doing drone FPV, the internal battery isn't really that big of a deal because whatever battery is inside the 11 Mini is going to outlast the drone flight itself. Now, one thing that a lot of users of the GoPro 11 Mini, especially for FPV, are definitely going to try out is the 8x7 mode in the GoPro. So we wanted to test out the 8x7 mode in 5.3K versus the 16:9 mode in 5.3K just to see what the difference would be. Now, the reason you would shoot in 8x7 is because you're most likely going to be doing vertical video, but you may want to use a 16:9 crop of that same video as well, and so you want to maximize the resolution you get. At the same time, I shoot mostly 16:9, so I wanted to see if the 5.3K in 16:9 itself versus 8x7 was much sharper. And after looking at the footage, yes, the 16:9 in 5.3K is sharper than shooting 5.3K in 8x7. However, if you're going to use vertical crops of the 16:9 footage, the field of view is so much more narrow than the 8x7 aspect ratio that I would still recommend, if you plan on doing any kind of vertical video shooting with the GoPro 11 Mini, definitely use the 8x7 mode, or if you just don't know if you're going to use it for vertical or 16:9, the 8x7 mode makes a lot of sense. However, if you're only going to be shooting in 16:9 and you don't need vertical video, definitely shoot in the 16:9 because the quality is a little bit better. Now, some of you may have noticed the drone we're actually using as our FPV drone is the DJI Avata. Now, my buddy Mark bought the DJI Avata, and I did a video on it a month or so ago, and we did like the drone. However, one thing we noticed off the bat is the image quality from that drone is just not our favorite. It's not there for my tastes, and I wasn't super stoked with it, and it's part of the reason why we got the GoPro 11 Mini to use on the DJI Avata. Mark was actually about to sell his Avata just because he wasn't too wild about the image quality. We started seeing other people make mounts, putting actual GoPro 10 and 11s on their DJI Avata, so we figured if people are putting regular GoPros on the Avata, putting an 11 Mini makes a lot more sense. So we were happy to give this a try, and obviously, as you can see from the footage, the video footage from the GoPro 11 Mini is much better than the DJI Avata. So for now, for the FPV stuff that we do, which is more for fun, we're definitely going to really be sticking with the GoPro 11 Mini instead of using the DJI Avata camera. Now, the cool part about having the DJI Avata camera is you'll always have a secondary backup footage in case you need it, but then you also have a really solid actual first-person camera that isn't just a low-res camera feed that we've been getting on traditional FPV drones. The other thing too with the Avata versus a lot of the other FPVs out there is it has all the GPS and smart functions, so if you need to fly the drone home, you lose connection or whatever, you can do that with the Avata versus all of the other FPV drones out there that don't have that feature. Now, I do want to thank Freewell again for sending out the filters for us to test on the GoPro 11 Mini. It was great to have them because when we're filming, we like to have our shutter speed at 180 degrees or double your frame rate, and it just gives you a much better motion blur, especially when you're lower to the ground. So it was nice to be able to do that off the bat right when we got the camera. I'll put a link to Freewell's filters and everything we discussed in today's video in the description below. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below as well. And if you got knowledge and value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos from the channel. Till next time, my name's Geoff Fagien. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.